A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Hey, what a privilege it is. A remarkable story to talk about today. You might be aware of the amazing legacy of Brother Andrew, who founded Open Doors. Well, in the 1970s, as the Open Doors ministry to the persecuted church around the world began to captivate the imaginations of Christians, there was a time when an Open Doors base was established here in Australia. Dean Keaney was a young man from Denver, Colorado in the United States, whose life was forever changed by an invitation to serve the persecuted church. He was inspired by the exploits of Brother Andrew, leaving his family in America to establish an Open Doors base here in Australia. And from here, enabling Bible courier trips into some of Asia's most restricted nations. Well, Dean, with his wife Becky, established Open Doors in Australia in 1978. And Dean has served the persecuted church in China, in North Korea, in Vietnam, Bangladesh, India, Laos, Egypt, Iraq and Cuba over 47 years. But now he has told his story in a new book. It's called Who? Me, Lord? You've got to be kidding. 40 years of serving the persecuted church. Dean Keaney, let me make a special welcome along to you to today's 2020.
Thanks, Neil. It's great to be with you.
Hey, Dean, when you've been at the helm or involved in this ministry to the persecuted church as long as you have, you can reflect on God's extraordinary faithfulness to those who love and serve him. It's not always easy being a Christian. We find it pretty easy in Australia, not so easy in lots of nations around the world. How do you reflect on God's faithfulness?
Well, I think you just, if you know the Lord and you just kind of trust him, you got to put your trust in him. And then you're going to see that through your life, no matter what you do, you're going to just know that God's with you. You'll see things happen that you just almost can't believe. And I can talk about trips I've done into China and other countries, how I've actually seen God do miracles, really miracles that would actually stun people that say, how did that happen? How could that possibly happen? And, and God is with you because he says that, that faithful is he who calls you, who also will do it. So really, it's about him doing the work. You just get to go along and watch him do what he wants to do. And he wants to do it through us, through all of us. We all have a part to play. God's calling all of us to mission work.
Early in our conversation here, when we talk about miracles, and there'll be some who are sitting and listening thinking, those miracles are not happening in my life. I'm not seeing them in my day-to-day operations, and I'm a Christian believer, but I'm not seeing those miracles. Stepping out into the unknown and sometimes into the dangerous is where those miracles seem to happen, and you were brave enough to do that. Some courage there that took you into a step into the unknown, and that's where you began to see God's miracles. How do you reflect on that some might not see those miracles so often?
Well, I think I agree with you. Until you step out and do something that God's asking you to do, like, I didn't feel really qualified to actually come and start the base. I was growing up in Denver, just looking after myself, doing whatever everybody else did. Although I was a Christian, my life wasn't what you would really say, above board and doing what a good Christian guy would do. But when God called us to this ministry, he asked us to start doing stuff like take Bibles into China, smuggle them in. And then by doing that, you have the risk of, okay, if you're going to get caught, what's going to happen? I've had taken all 5 of my kids on Bible courier trips with me, not thinking, but trusting God that, hey, if we get caught, God's going to look after both of us. And I remember this one time, I took Jonathan, he was 12 years old, we went into Vietnam, and we got caught. We had about 13 other couriers with us. We got caught. and they asked us, they had two suitcases on the floor, and they said, "Whose are these?" And I said, "Well, they're mine and my son's." He says, "You must open these bags." We had 4 soldiers standing behind us. We had the customs official in front of us. And he says, "You must open those bags." And of course, my heart sank because I knew what we had in there. We had Bibles wrapped in paper, trying to hide them under the clothes. I opened the flap on the floor, got the zippers undone. And then I stood up, and he come up, put his hands under the clothes, pulled out the wrapped Bibles, put them on top. He didn't tear the paper, but he put them on top, and he says, "What are these?" And I says, "Well, they're gifts for the people of Vietnam. Wherever we travel, we bring gifts to show we love the people." He says, no, you cannot bring Bibles to Vietnam." He says, "You wait here. I get higher authority." And then he started walking off, and I almost chuckled. I said, "No, better not do that," because I was thinking, higher authority? Hey, I know someone who's got all authority. And so I just waited, and all of a sudden he's coming back. He's got nobody with him. He was walking up to us, and I get this impression. The Lord's telling me, "Put the Bibles back in the suitcase and close it." I said, "Lord, he's not going to be happy. Put him back." So I put him back in the suitcase, put the flap down, put the zippers together. He walks right up to me, looks me in the face, says, no, you cannot do that." And then it was just as if I sensed Jesus walked up next to me and put out his hand and says, "Oh, yes, he can, because I have all authority here." And then his face changed from an angry face. He started smiling, and they started chuckling. He says, "Oh, okay, go ahead, take him in." And we both took him in. Jono jumped up, kicked me in the backside. "Come on, Dad," he said, "we can go." And so we went in and took all the Bibles in and got them distributed to the pastors in Vietnam. That's the miracle, Neil. That's the miracle.
That's a miracle. Sometimes we don't appreciate the needs that existed back then, and there are needs that exist today. Calls for Bibles. Lots of nations ban the Bible, and so getting the Bible to people. You know, sometimes we talk about digital versions of the Bible too, and sometimes that's got its own place to play. But the actual written word in a hard copy, there was a tremendous need back in those days, as there continues to be today. How do you reflect on the needs back then and the fact that there are huge needs today?
Well, I think as the church is growing in some of the places where there's great revival, like in Iran and other countries where, Muslims are having visions of who Jesus is, and they're converting and they're coming to faith in Christ. So how are they going to get the Word of God in their hands? So our mission is still much needed. There's other groups also doing the work, and we're here to meet their needs, because that was always Brother Andrew's main objective. Was we will do what they ask us to do, not what we think they need, but we'll bring them whatever they ask for. And you know what it's like. Yeah, you can have a digital Bible, you can have it on your iPhone, but there's nothing like having it in your hand where you can underline it, color code it, circle it, and just have it with you all the time. That's kind of hard to do on an iPhone. So it's just a privilege to have in your hand, I think.
Having it in your hand and written in the language of your mother tongue, that makes it really accessible. Hey, I know listeners will be picking up on when you were sharing about, the need for courage. You didn't feel especially courageous. In fact, you didn't have a sense of saintly righteousness when you were called into doing this, and you didn't feel as though you were adequate in some ways to come and open an office here in Australia. Take us back to some of these early years, the Dean Keaney growing up years, because you and your brothers had a bit of a reputation. You were known as the Keaney boys. Take us back to, your growing up years in the US.
Well, yeah, that was kind of like my two older brothers. They were a bit ahead of me. I was the third born in the family, so I guess that kind of made me a little non-talkative. I used to sit in the car and drive for hours, wouldn't say a word. And because I think my mother, at first she said, if she had 2 sons, she wanted a girl. and I wasn't a girl, but I must have picked up on that somewhere in the womb or something. So I really wasn't confident. And my brothers, I was a good student in high school. We were going to Christian school, but my brothers one night came home, said, "There he is, let's get him." They jumped on me in bed, opened my mouth, started pouring their beer down my throat. And that got me into their mode where all of a sudden all three of us are going out drinking, carousing, and that's how we got the reputation, the Keaney boys. We'd go out and have parties in the woods and all kinds of people doing stuff. And then one time I was in a drive-in theater, we called them, where the girls would come out, put a tray on your window, and we called them car hops, and they'd take your order and bring out your food, and then you have a drink on the window. And we were there, and this kid threw a snowball at a cigarette machine, and the other kid was getting out of the pack of cigarettes, and that splash hit him in the face, so a fight broke out. The policeman came out of the store, and this kid kind of started fighting with the cop, and me and my friend Jack just stood there amazed, like, "Oh, well, wait a minute, we ain't into this." And so he took off, and the cop went in to get more help, and so he ran away. We drove out of the restaurant through the back gate, and then we almost ran over him. It started to snow, and he ran past it, and all he said, "Well, look, get me home, get me home." We tried to take him home. And yet, when we got to one corner in the main street going through Denver, the police hit that corner at the same exact time. So I spent 3 days in the county jail with him and my friend, and all of a sudden, we weren't doing too well and lost a good weekend. But my friend's boss, he came and he got us out with no record because they had some false charges laid against us that were very critical and very damning and could really put us away for a while. Like we had girls in the car and doing things like that, but we had no girls, just 3 guys. And so they said, "Well, look, if you sign that you won't sue the police, we'll drop all the charges," which we did. And then we got out and we were okay. But through that, it was like, hey, I'm not the candidate that should be doing this job. And I went through, and so my friend and I, we were kind of living the wildlife, and we thought we better join the Navy before we kill ourselves. And so because we were really radical, doing strange. I rolled my car into a farmer's field, almost killed him. And didn't do me much good either. Lost a good 52 Chevy. We finally joined the Navy, went on Operation Deep Freeze, 63, 64, went through New Zealand, up to Australia, met a girl there, married her on a whirlwind romance, and people would say, that ain't going to last long. Well, it didn't. It lasted 4 years and 1 son later. She filed for divorce, and that really hit me, and that because I never wanted to be that kind of a guy. And so I decided I got to go 100% for the Lord. And I went the Lord's way, and she said, "Now you've gone too far. I can't, go with you." And so we broke up, and she left with my son, flew back to Australia. I lost him for 11 years, never saw him for 11 years. And it was through that, in the way I felt like, I've messed up my life. What good am I? And so I was very depressed. A friend took me to a Baptist church and told the pastor, "I'm depressed. I ought to just end it all." And he said, "Dean, if you do that, God can't use you." I said, "God, what'd you say? God can't use me? Why in the world would he want to use me? And what for? I'm not good enough for anything." But that was like, put me on the path. Well, hey, maybe it is. And I started praying about, Lord, if there is something, use me.
Thank you so much for your candid way of talking about early years, pushing boundaries as a young man, even spending a few nights in the county jail because you'd pushed boundaries a little bit too far. Joining the Navy, marrying a girl in a whirlwind romance who happened to be an Aussie, and that failed. I mean, and you feel like sometimes a failure, and you're even at the point where you say, well, I might end it all. What a word from a pastor, though. that says, don't end it all, Dean. How can you serve God? God can't use you if you kill yourself. What's your thought here or advice for some young people who might be listening to our conversation thinking, I haven't got it all together here. Can God use me? Just a quick encouragement here from you, Dean, because I think your encouragement's very powerful.
Well, that's true, Neil. It's like God is a God of mercy. He came and he gave his son for us to forgive us for our messed up lives, whatever we've done. There's no sin too great where the goodness, the forgiveness of God can't cover that and forgive it. And that's when, I started attending this Baptist church where that pastor said that, and he had missionaries coming through. And there was one missionary, who was from Brazil. And it was just a sense where God was starting to deal with me in my life that, hey, your past is not a hindrance for me to use you. Whatever you've done, I'm the God of grace and mercy and love. I can use anybody who's willing to say yes to me. And that's one reason why I wrote the book, Neil. It wasn't because I thought my life was going to be much better than anybody else. It was like, there's people I know that probably struggle with this like I did. And God wants to use them, but they don't think they're good enough. Well, if you look at the Bible, nobody thought they were good enough. Moses didn't think he was. Gideon didn't think he was. All of the great prophets didn't think they were good enough. But that's our God. He's merciful. He's gracious. He's kind. And he just wants to use all of us. He called us, And I remember that verse that I finally got, 1 Thessalonians 5:24. Faithful is he who calls you, who also will do it. And that really stuck with me. And then there's another one, John 15:16 says, you didn't choose me, but I chose you and anointed you to go and bear fruit, that your fruit should remain. That whatever you ask, I will do it in my name. And that's our God. God can use anybody, any of our listeners out there, no matter what you've done or how messed up you've been or think you've been. The grace and mercy of God covers it all. You just got to ask for the free gift. By grace, you're saved.
Visions 2020 with Neil Johnson. A biblical perspective on life, culture, and current events.
Why don't we take a call straight away, Dean? Bernadette is in Kingston in South Australia. Hello, Bernadette. Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Neil. Yes, I'm really interested about this talk about with Open Doors. Quite a few years ago, I went to North Korea with Open Doors Underground Church and in North Korea, and it was amazing. And I have had supported the Open Doors ministry, and I praise the persecuted church, and I think they're doing a wonderful job for the Lord. And so, I just thought I'd just ring up and say, that's why I'm ringing up today, because
wonderful.
Yeah, and I first got the book too about Open Doors with Brother Andrew. I devoured it hungrily. I thought, wow, because my family came originally from Holland. My dad did, and I admired Corrie ten Boom, what she did, and then Brother Andrews, and so I've read heaps of book about Brother Andrews and associated. So I've had a passionate love for Brother Andrew organisation and their ministry. And supported them, and I'm just pleased that they're on the radio. So that's the reason why I've rung up today.
Wonderful, Bernadette. Well, let's get a thought or two. Dean, what are you feeling when you hear from someone like Bernadette?
Well, it just thrills our heart because, that's God moving and choosing people, just like he chose me to start the base. He chose Bernadette to be involved, and he's using her to supply much of these Bibles around the world and the work that Open Doors does. In fact, she went to North Korea on a prayer walk, I assume, because I went to North Korea once. I had a fantastic time. And she read God Smuggler, Brother Andrew's book. I hope she gets my book and reads that too, because it's all about how did the base start in Australia. And it shows, 5 courage stories of my kids. It shows my trip to North Korea as well, and I'm sure she'd be blessed. But Bernadette, it's great to hear from you, and just to hear of your love for the mission and what you've done over the years. God bless you. We thank you for what you've done.
The Lord sent me to North Korea twice, actually. I've been there twice.
Wow.
Okay. Oh, great.
I said, the Lord's got a funny, wacky sense of humor. I'm just a little housewife. I said, first of all, he asked me to go. I said, I don't want to go. I said, if you break this fear off. So he took me there once to the underground church in China, to North Korea with your group, and then with another group, with a prayer group, and I've been twice. And he said, because you've been to North Korea twice, you're going to Israel twice. So I went to Israel with Mandy Warby with Vision Radio and with another prayer group. So that's my story, yeah.
Wow. Bernadette, wonderful to hear from you. And, you're not alone. There's others who've taken a courageous step. Just before I let you go, Bernadette, taking a courageous step, stepping out and doing something like that, going on a tour, knowing that you're going into a place that has a little bit of danger attached to it. Was that hard for you, Bernadette, just very quickly?
In the beginning, but can I tell you something exciting in the midst of all that? The Lord taught me an important lesson when I was in North Korea. He said, the most dangerous place in the world isn't North Korea, it's out of the will of God. That's what he told me. So I thought, it doesn't matter what's happening all around. If you're in the will of God, that's in the safest place. It's like I've got family in New South Wales. I've got a granddaughter. I haven't been up there since she's been born because the Lord told me it's dangerous. I could be attacked. I could be killed because of the stuff going on. So I'm happy to say, stay home. I have regular phone calls and stuff. So it's like I'm happy when the Lord shuts doors and I want to stay in His perfect will, whether that's in Australia or overseas. It's like He keeps you safe. It doesn't mean stuff's going to happen, but that's the safest place to be.
Wonderful. Hey, what a little treasure of wisdom that is. The safest places being in the will of God, the least safe places being out of it. A quick further comment from you, Dean, for Bernadette?
Yes, Bernadette, you're really true there, because even Brother Andrew said the safest place is to be in the center of God's will. It's more dangerous to be out of His will than in His will, and I think that's why you were able to go to China, North Korea, and all the places you've traveled, and it's amazing what God will do, and the peace that you have when you go across those borders into those countries. Yeah, you might be a bit nervous at the border, but once you're through the border, you've seen what God has done. He's got you through. You still got your Bibles, or you're still able to pray in North Korea. I had a great time. Met two tour guides there. Was able to share the gospel with one up a mountain. And I asked him, I said, Lee, have you ever heard of Jesus Christ? He says, no, I've never heard that name before. And I gave him my Bible. And overnight, he came to me the next day. He says, I can't have this book. It will mean my life. And that's the importance of that book. It will, for them, it's dangerous, but it's also life to them if they keep it. And the other tour guide was Kim. And on the bus going to the airport, I had a lot of fun with him. He had a lapel of Kim and Sung on his shirt. And I said, if you lose one of those, can you get another one? He says, yes. I said, oh, could I have yours? He said, oh, no, this is only for us. So I put my arm around his neck, and I said, well, if I pinch this and you say it's lost, he says, oh, you very funny man. I didn't get his pin. But on the way to the airport, as we were leaving, he walked to the back of the bus, made sure the other guard wasn't watching, put his hand around my neck, put his cheek up to mine, and said, Dean, I have a good friend in America. All Americans aren't Yankee imperialists. And I said, Kim, I have a good friend in North Korea. We had really bonded. And they said, your tour group isn't like other tour groups. You get on so well together. You have so much fun together. And we'd sing songs like How Great Thou Art and God and everything. We had a great time.
Dean, before we go any further, let's take another call. It's another Bernadette. Might be a Bernadette Day, but this Bernadette's not in South Australia, but in Victoria. Bernadette from Harkness. Hello, Bernadette. Welcome.
Hello, Neil. Thanks for having me on. Dean Keaney, amazing stories that inspire me. Neil, I'm always informed and well-informed and inspired listening to your program and your guests. It's a fabulous program. But today I wanted to say I've just retired recently, and I'm looking for what I'll do in the next chapter of my life. We're still young when we're at retirement age, and we have resources and we have time, and I don't know, I just feel very moved to do something great in maybe the last or second last chapter of my life. and encourage retired people to do the same. Recently, I've been talking about speaking up, standing up. You know, we have a voice, we need to use it in regards to government changes and all that sort of stuff. But I just had to speak and hear the encouragement that comes from just your stories.
Wow. Hey,
Yeah.
Bernadette, this is an inspiration, and I know there'll be lots of others saying, hey, I'm pushing retirement years, a time when I've got maybe more resources in my hand, more time on my hands, and hopefully a little bit of extra wisdom than I had in my earlier years. Let's bring Dean. Dean, when you're hearing Bernadette reflecting on this, what are your thoughts? Dean, let me just... Gotcha.
I think, I'd like to say to Bernadette, what a blessing you are just to, say what you've said about wanting to do more. That tickles the heart of God. That's what he's looking for, people who are ready and willing to do anything you might not think you can do, like what we did. By the way, I'm 83 years old, so just to let you know, I'm up there too, and I'm still with Open Doors 2 days a week. But God can use you in any way that you're willing to put your hand up, but just loving people, just smiling at them, just sharing the gospel with them, handing out a gospel tract. You don't have to do great, mighty things. I think the main thing is just be faithful to whatever God asks you to do. If it's to say hi to a neighbor, say hi to him. Smile at him, smile at him. Just do anything that you sense God's asking you to do, and because that's the best thing, and that thrills his heart, because he will use you for sure, and you will be blessed and have the joy of the Lord as your strength. God bless you. Thank you.
Bernadette, anything further to add?
So thankful and grateful for the encouragement. I feel a bit emotional because it's very valuable words that move me and lift me up, and that's how we carry on together as Christians,
Wonderful.
We have to band together and speak up and move now. Anyway, I don't want to get on my soapbox, but thank you for the encouragement for the program, Neil. And thank you, Dean. You're so encouraging. Thanks.
Bernadette, what a privilege it is to be able to serve in the ministry role that I have. And I know that Dean is celebrating that privilege that he's had to be able to serve. And thank you so much for your call today. Our talkback line open, 1800 316 316. Send us a text on 0447 488 316. Hey, I got a message on a text. I'm not sure it's perfectly related, except to say a message from Alec, who says, we'd been really struggling financially. Last week while praying, I held up my wallet and said, Lord, this is your money. Please bless this so I can help my family. 5 days later, someone from my church gave me a generous amount of money because they heard we were struggling. God will use others to answer our prayers. We can all be instruments of God if we just submit to Jesus and really pay attention to his words. I think talking about miracles inspired that little testimony there. A very quick comment from you around that, Dean?
Yeah, I think that's right. That's all we got to do is just share where we are with the Lord. He cares, he sees, he knows, and he will do what we need to be done, because he says, he will supply all our need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus. And if you have a need, God loves to use other people to meet that need. And praise God. Thank you for sharing that beautiful story.
Hey, we're talking about your autobiography, your story, getting involved, and now 47 years with Open Doors. And as you say, at age 83, you're still serving 2 days a week. Back in 1971, after a former failed marriage, you found Becky. You married Becky in 1971, and you began to serve with Teen Challenge. Take us from those days into how you got involved with Open Doors.
Of the church. She came from Michigan. She was the daughter of a pastor. Passed away when she was 9, came to Denver to teach in our Christian school. in our church where I was at Lutheran attending the church, and met her at her induction service. And I thought, wow, she's looking pretty good. So we struck up a conversation, started dating. Her mother met me and said, well, you got to try and establish that relationship with your first wife before I say yes, that God's in this. I said, okay, I'll do that. I tried to re-establish that. It came back no way. She had remarried. And so Becky and I got married, and we were living in Denver. She was a teacher. I was working for the power company, and I was helping her principal with his youth group. And I had a girl come in and say, look, I just been a teen challenge sharing the gospel out on the streets in East Denver. And I said, oh, well, where's that? And so I went down and started sharing and going out on the streets witnessing, which I'd never been done before, ever. And just saw God start leading people to Christ. And so then I took Becky there with me. Her mother came to visit. I took her there, and she wasn't too thrilled because it was a pretty rough area of town. And being, the mother of her daughter that I married, being the pastor's wife, she wasn't so sure that we should be in that part of town doing what we were doing. But she understood we were working for the Lord. And we just saw many people come to Christ. And after that, I actually heard Brother Andrew speak in Denver because this one pastor brought him for some meetings. I went to a church, heard him, got involved, signed up to be on the mailing list, started supporting him. And then one day we got this cassette prayer tape in the mail that was asking us to pray for someone to start the base in Australia. And immediately I said, that's not me. I gave the tape to my pastor, forgot all about it. He came back and said, Dean, you're praying about this. Why don't you go answer your own prayer? And I didn't have the courage to tell him, well, I haven't prayed at all about it because I didn't think it was me. I said, well, look, he said, write a letter. If it's not of God, it'll get lost in the mail. But if it is of God, you may get a phone call. So I wrote a letter real quick. What does it take to get involved with Open Doors? Signed it and sent it off. And I thought, I'll get all this material. Got to have mission experience, all this accreditation. I thought that'd be the end of it. Becky got the phone call. And the guy called from California, says, oh, you don't know about your husband's letter, do you? Let me read it to you. So she was shocked. But on that year, we attended a Change the World School of Prayer, and we were given the prayer profiles of every province in China to pray for. And she took it. The Lord was telling her, this is your prayer burden for the whole year. And from now on, don't stop. This is what you're here for. And so when we got that tape, he came to interview me, and he just started seeing what God was doing. In our home church was a missionary church, had many missionary speakers. And one day we presented ourselves that we felt God was calling us. And then our pastor was visited by this man who came from California to talk about Open Doors. He says, well, we know they're going, but we don't know where yet. But 3 days later, he called us and said, look, we're willing to send you out with Open Doors to start this base in Australia. And that was God's provision for us. We had to raise our own support. We had to get ourselves to Australia. It was under control. Becky just had our third daughter in October of that year, 1977, and on January 1st, 78, we were on the airplane heading for California, going down to Australia. And I got a lot more information in the book about that. We didn't have visas, we didn't have the right papers, but God undertook. I had sold my home, quit my job, and we were on the way. And it wasn't easy once we got to Australia.
No, so stepping out of the boat, all of a sudden you're expecting to walk on water and it's going to be easy, isn't it? Well, you were struck with all sorts of self-doubts as you were heading for Australia. It was not easy. There was family opposition in all of there. When you got here, it just was not an easy thing. I wonder if you can reflect on whether Australians were even interested in serving the persecuted church. How hard was it just getting some word out while you were here?
It was pretty difficult, Neil. In fact, when I was on the airplane, I was just praying, Lord, don't let me fail, don't fail. And that was just the only prayer I could pray. That's all I knew. When we got to Australia, I started calling pastors to share with them how God has called us to this work. I thought they would say, oh, that's God. He's at work. Yes, come and share in the church. And they'd listen very politely. And then at the end, they would say, and where are you from? And I'd say, I'm from America. They had this conception in their mind that here was another one of these Americans coming to Australia, start a mission, gain big offerings, and then fly out of the country with all the money. And they wouldn't open their pulpits. And now, we were going to Christchurch, St. Ives at the time. And even there, we never got much of an inroads until this guy, John, who was a bespoke tailor, asked me one day, he says, how's things going? I said, John, it's tough. People don't want to, they don't trust Americans. He says, well, come to my house. I'll invite some people over. You can show a film, give a talk. So I did that. And then he started following me. And he told me one day, he said, Dean, if you get 2 requests for a meeting, don't turn one down. I said, well, John, I can't be in 2 places at once. He says, you don't have to. And he showed me a tape recorder. He said, Dean, I've recorded your message. So you take one meeting, I'll take the other. So I had a volunteer. God provided a volunteer right out of that church. And then the door started open because I said to the Lord, Lord, I will go anywhere, speak to anyone, be it a school, a church, a university, a home group. I don't care who asks. Even if it's a primary school, little kids, I'll go share the mission with them. So wherever you want me to go. And then I knew Brother Andrew was coming 9 months later. We got here January 78. He was coming in September, and I didn't know anybody in the country. I felt like, Lord, is this the end of my life? How am I going to do this? But God made a way and started bringing contacts. People I got involved. I got the mailing list, started looking at people in different places. We had 5 major rallies with Brother Andrew. Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, went down to Launceston, and it just grew. People started signing up when they heard Brother Andrew share his messages from Eastern Europe. They started signing up, forming prayer groups, getting our prayer tape. It was launched. Brother Andrew really launched the mission by God using him. It was God's mission, Neil. This is God's mission.
God's mission, and he was the one who was meeting the needs and bringing the right people across your path and forming what would become a very significant organisation here in Australia. You started going on some trips. The whole Bible smuggling thing was all part of what you were doing, because there are places in the world they just could not have Bibles legally. You went to Hong Kong with your 12-year-old daughter. That was a pretty dangerous expedition to be taking your family on. What happened on that particular trip?
Well, Neil, this is the amazing one, because we were at what we called the Amana Conference, where Open Doors set up. We recruited 150 Bible couriers from around the world. We stayed at Jackie Pullinger's campsite, and we were going to hit the borders of China every other day for 2 weeks. And we were going to go in by train, by plane, by bus, any way we could get in. And that's how it was going to work for 2 weeks. And my daughter Naomi and I, we got on a boat out of Hong Kong, heading for Haikou Island, which is down the south. And we took 19 in there. But the strange thing was, as we were going through customs, one of our couriers, was a Chinese from Singapore, got caught. They opened his luggage, found the Bibles, and so we thought, we're pretty well sprung. They know who we are. We got on the boat, and so did 6 policemen got on the boat, followed us all the way to Haikou. And our team leader said, look, don't go to sleep. I'm going to try and get us off of this island as fast as I can. The only thing he could find was a 6:30 a.m. back to China, up the Pearl River to Canton. We all got on the boat, So did 6 policemen get on the boat. And they were in the lunchroom pointing at us, looking at us, talking about us. And we knew that they knew that our bags were filled with Bibles. We got up to got up to Canton, tied up at the dock. And as we were coming up the stairs, and I had my hand on the door, it was a sliding door, and I heard this. It locked the door solid, that door. And I looked at all our team. Do you remember the story of the Ethiopian eunuch? How God used Philip to share with the Ethiopian eunuch on his chariot? It said, then he transported Philip immediately away. He said, let's pray God will transport whoever's on the other side of that door somewhere in China. Put him in Beijing, put him in China. So we can get off this boat. And all of a sudden, that bolt unlocked. I flung open the door, stepped outside, and there was no one in sight. No one was on the boat. No one was on the deck, on the shore, anywhere. And we couldn't figure out what happened. Where did this person go? And so we thought, well, maybe God did that. Maybe an angel came. So we got off, got down, got into Canton, quickly delivered our Bibles and got a fast train out of Canton back to Hong Kong. And and we're still amazed when we tell that story. What did God do?
Unexplained things, and you put it down to a miracle occurrence, even answered prayer in that moment. Hey, let's take another call. Hank is in Hobart in Tasmania. Hey, Hank, need to be quick, but what are your thoughts?
Very quickly, I just want to mention whether this gentleman knows my brother Arit, who was heavily involved with God smuggling Bibles from the Reformed Church people in Tasmania, and he took a number of trips to China, and they had an amazing time smuggling Bibles into China. He's now 91 with dementia in a Brisbane hospital, but I just want to know whether this gentleman knows my brother Arit, who did this some years ago and got the traditional conservative Dutchies to go to China, and he took them through extraordinary events, and that's a story in itself.
And Dean?
I probably do. What was his name?
Arit Petrusma.
Eric Petrusma. Yeah, I remember that name. Yes, I think so. We may even been on a team together. I don't know. The memory is a bit shady that way, but yeah, I remember Petrusma. Definitely.
Hank, wonderful to hear from you. And yes, there's a conversation like this. A lot of people know someone who went on an open doors expedition and was smuggling Bibles, whether it was China or Vietnam. Hank in Hobart, thank you so much for your call. We won't be able to take any more calls. Hey, we've got to draw some loose ends together here. Maybe it's a where to from here for you now, because your new book has been released. It's called Who Me, Lord? You've got to be kidding. Are you doing a bit of a speaking tour or anything like that that's going to go along with this, Dean? And listeners, where will they get a hold of your book?
Well, they can get the book either from Kurong or off Amazon. If they want ebook, they can get it ebook Amazon as well. So the book's out there and available. I don't know about the speaking tour. A publisher was trying to set something up, and I think she kind of missed the action because they were going to hope to have a signing of the book at Kurong, and she missed that. But it was launched on July 4th. So I would just encourage people to go ahead and go to Kurong or get on Amazon, get the book, tell your friends about it, share it with them, because it's really a book about God and what he can do with anybody who's willing to say, yes, Lord, here am I, send me. You might not feel like you're qualified, but God doesn't look at qualifications. He looks at your heart. Are you willing to say yes to him? And then he definitely will use you.
Well, there's lots more stories that we haven't been able to tell on today's conversation, but you might like to get a hold of the book and check out some of the amazing stories, even stories of typhoons arriving just in the right time. I'll let you just explore the book for that. But Dean and his wife Becky established Open Doors in Australia way back in 1978. His new book is called Who Me, Lords? You've got to be kidding. 40 years of serving the persecuted church. And as Dean says, at places like Coorong or on Amazon, so you can order it wherever you might be. Just go onto Amazon, you'll find Who Me Lord. You've got to be kidding. And no doubt there'll be some sort of a link there on the Open Doors website too. You might want to check out opendoors.org.au. While you're there, find out what sort of campaigns they've got going now. There might even be something that you can join in with. opendoors.org.au. Dean Keaney, thank you so much for taking some time to share your heart and your story with us today on 2020.
Thanks, Neil. It's great being with you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.